Why we resist meditation. I've been meditating since 2005, so for the last 20 years, and I still go through times when I resist meditating. So today I want to talk about some of the reasons why we might resist meditation, because it can be helpful when we understand why there might be resistance to help us to move through the resistance and build a good meditation practice. And the first reason is something that we're going to go in the deep end here and go deep with a reason why we might resist meditation. Because if you essentially look at what meditation is, it's you sitting with yourself and being present with yourself and your body, your internal world, your mind for however long. You can meditate for 1 minute. Like I went through a time where I meditated every day for a year, and I gave myself the minimum of 1 minute a day. And that's something that it's still incredibly beneficial to just sit with yourself and breathe deeply and consciously for 1 entire minute. And so I made a video on my experience meditating every day for a year, which I'll link up here and down in this video description if you're interested in learning a bit more about that. But essentially what I want to talk about is that meditation doesn't have to be this massive thing where you're meditating for an hour every day. It can literally be as simple as 1 minute, but we still may resist that. And essentially, if it's us being present with ourself, with our mind, with our body, with our feelings for a minute, this is something that may not come naturally to us if we didn't grow up in an environment where we had parents or caregivers who were emotionally present with us. And this is something that goes to kind of the root or base of why we may resist this. And it's something that's very common because in past generations, it wasn't encouraged for parents to be emotionally present with their kids. It was in fact the opposite that was encouraged. And so the majority of people on the planet, I can only speak to my own culture because I'm not that familiar with all the intricacies of all the other cultures, but the majority of the people on the planet within, let's say, a Western culture over a certain age, most of us didn't have all of our emotional needs met as children. And this is something that I'm not saying this to shame parents or caregivers in any way. It could be something like we might have had parents or caregivers who were in survival mode. They may have been stressed out, really busy, different things going on. But what children need is emotional presence and help with emotional regulation, because we understand with child development that it's impossible for a child to emotionally regulate. And so it's very important to have a parent and caregiver who is able to help the child with breathing and emotionally regulating through difficult emotions. And then if something difficult happens for a child, it's important for them to have an adult figure that they can come to who's going to support them through whatever's happening emotionally, with being present with them, validating them, empathizing with them, as opposed to a lot of us may have grown up being told don't cry, or being gaslit, or kind of having our emotions being avoided and just told to focus on something else or do something where we're just not being present with ourselves. And so if we grew up being essentially taught as children when we're sponges that it's not safe to be present with ourselves and with what's happening internally, then it's just not something that's going to come naturally to us. And the way that the brain is designed is that it seeks what's familiar, not necessarily what's best for it. And so if it's familiar for us to be neglected in different ways, then we're just going to grow up and neglect ourselves in different ways as well. And meditation is really a way to be present with ourselves that just might not be familiar to a lot of us. And so it can take a lot more for us to develop it as a practice. And it's likely outside of our comfort zone too, if it's something that we haven't grown up with. And so the brain also avoids anything outside of the familiar, anything outside of its comfort zone. And this includes things that are healthy and good for us. But if it's not familiar, then it's not what we seek. And so if what's familiar to us is more chaos and distraction and being busy, which is often really, I was going to say recommended, but it's like encouraged in Western society, then if that's what's familiar to us, then that's just what we're going to seek and do naturally. So it's really outside of our natural habits in the West to be meditating. And this is something that we can also shift for future generations. So there are a couple examples I want to share, because these are things that I saw in my life and that I did and experienced in my life that I found really helpful. And it just gave me a lot of hope for future generations if we can all just be a little bit more mindful of this and take good care of ourselves and being present with ourselves. It extends to children in our lives if we have children or if we're caregivers. And so one example was I was at a coffee shop once, and there was a man with his daughter, and his daughter looked like she was maybe 3, if even, so maybe 2.5, 3, and she was having a really hard time and really expressing that emotionally. And he just kept saying, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. And so he was really able to regulate himself emotionally through his daughter's tantrum, and to also help soothe her by just bringing her back to her breath. And he just kept saying, take a deep breath. And she's like screaming and crying, take a deep breath. And he just kept saying that. And she was eventually able to listen to what he was saying and take a deep breath. And this is what children need, especially at that age when their brain is not formed to be able to regulate emotions at all. So they're 100% dependent on their caregiver regulating their emotions for them. So that was like A plus amazing example from that father. And then another example from another father was he had a baby, and you guys might have seen this because it was a pretty viral video, but he had a baby that was crying, like a really young baby. He's crying in his arms, and then he just started breathing deeply and oming. So he would go Om, and hold the Om for a long time, and that completely soothed the baby, so the baby stopped crying. And so this emotional regulation is so important for children. And in my own life, I used to work in childcare, and there was a time when, like, sometimes I would have 10 kids, and it would be babies, so young babies, toddlers, and children in the room, and it would get pretty chaotic sometimes. And there was a day where there was about 10 or 11 kids and babies, and it was feeling really stressful and chaotic. And then I chose to go into meditation, and so I was holding a baby, so all the kids were safe for me to close my eyes for a minute, but I was holding a baby, and there's just kids and toddlers and just a lot happening. And so I tuned in with my breath and was taking deep inhales and deep exhales and started getting into a more meditative state. And then the whole room, after less than a minute, the whole room became really calm, a lot more quiet. And this is something that children seek, that emotional regulation from caregivers and the adults. So if there's an adult in the room, the kids are kind of like taking the pulse of that adult. And so if that adult is really stressed out, then the kids are naturally going to be more stressed out too. So the more we can really self-soothe and regulate ourselves, the better it is for children in our lives. And then that has a ripple effect, which makes it so that then it becomes normal for them to see adults taking deep breaths and encouraging them to take deep breaths. And it just becomes more natural to emotionally regulate and be present with the self, and meditation becomes a lot more easier then. And this is also something, not to shame past generations, but it's also something that naturally the brain is wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And sometimes it can feel painful to just sit with ourselves if we haven't healed from things that have happened in our lives. And when we're just sitting with ourselves, we can have all these different thoughts come up, or pain, or just things like going on in our lives, or even from the past that can kind of surface. And it can feel very uncomfortable to be sitting with that. And because the human brain also has a negativity bias, most thoughts that we have naturally tend to be negative thoughts. And so if you're just sitting there with all these negative thoughts and pain, then it's really uncomfortable, and obviously you're going to resist that. Like, it's like pretty self-explanatory why we're resisting meditation. And so it can be really helpful to sit with a guided meditation, so that it kind of guides your thoughts, and you don't even have to really fully pay attention to it, but it's something that can just feel healing to listen to. And I have guided meditations, and all of my meditations are energy healing too. So as you listen to them, it's bringing in soothing and healing into the mind and body as you're listening to it and meditating with it. So I'll link in this video description some energy healing meditations that I have for you. I've got a guided chakra balancing meditation that's really powerful and helpful, and then different ones that are available on YouTube too. And speaking of sitting in pain or with discomfort, there was a time when, because I got into meditation through yoga, so typically I would do yoga, and then at the end of yoga we lay in savasana and we meditate for 5 or 10 minutes after the yoga practice. And so sometimes if there's just a lot of different thoughts racing, or we might be feeling stressed out or different things like that, it can sometimes be helpful to just do some exercise before meditation. So after you've gotten some of that energy out in your exercise, then you might be feeling a bit more calm and in a state where you can be a bit more restful and peaceful to meditate. So just making it a practice to meditate after exercise can help it just become a little bit more easy, and something that if you've already got an exercise routine or practice, then it could be a bit easier to just add on like a minute of meditation whenever you're done. But I went through a period where I had gotten some injuries boundaries from yoga, and so I wasn't practicing yoga as much, but I still wanted the mental health benefits, so I was doing a lot more meditation. And one of the times when I was sitting in meditation, I was feeling discomfort and pain in my body, and my intuition told me, don't move your body, instead go into that pain and ask where it came from. So I did that. And I had this thought that would have been a subconscious thought that would have happened when I was about 8 years old with something painful or difficult that was going on in my life that turned into this thought. And it was just something where I wasn't even conscious that this was a thought or feeling that I had or something that was in me. And so then it made me start asking, does our emotional pain get trapped or stored in the body? And as I was asking that, I then went and stayed at a hostel, and I was talking about that, and then someone was like, yeah, it does. There's this book, and they showed me this book that goes into detail with that, and this is something that has been studied, that trauma and emotional pain gets stored physically in the body when it doesn't get properly processed or healed. And then in my meditations, I also started hearing the word Reiki, and I didn't know what Reiki was back then. This is over a decade ago, and I just kept hearing the word Reiki, and so I decided to sign up for a Reiki course and got certified in Reiki, and everything made sense once I was in the course and understanding what it was. And that's something that I've found since being attuned to Reiki that really helps with my meditations, because now when I sit in meditation, I'll put like my hand over my heart or on my sternum, so the solar plexus chakra, or wherever on my body, and I'm bringing healing energy into my body as I'm meditating, and that has really helped my meditation practice become a lot more healing and soothing. And I have an online course on Reiki. If that's something that you're interested in or curious about, then you can become trained and certified in Reiki through me. And it's something that is just so helpful as a practice for self-healing and self-soothing. And when we're bringing in this healing into our bodies, it can just become a lot more comfortable to be in meditation, because we don't have all of this old gunk that's in there within us. And I also have an energy healing program called Sanctuary, and this is a program where it includes guided energy healing meditations, and this is for all aspects of life. There's exercises and different things that we move through in the program, and then you get to have all of these guided energy healing meditations to really help to bring up and out all of these things that might be within you that can cause this discomfort or pain, so that when you're meditating, like now, whenever I meditate, I'll tune in, and it's almost just like clearing anything from the day or from the week or from the month, but it's not going into any old stuff because I've already cleared and healed all of the old stuff. And so this, if you've got all this old gunk from your life, it might be decades worth of stuff that you just haven't fully addressed and been present with and healed from, then all of that stuff is still trapped inside of your body, and it can affect your life day to day, and it can also lead to or contribute to different physical ailments. So the more we can uproot and let go of all of that stuff, then meditation just becomes more something that is done to just kind of keep us in a good state. And it's almost like this program Sanctuary is kind of like doing a deep cleaning, like I'm imagining if it's a house, we're like moving everything, doing a deep cleaning, letting go of all the stuff that isn't good for us. And then after that, our meditation practice is more just like sweeping and vacuuming and cleaning off the surfaces on a daily basis. And it's something that is a lot more easy and manageable once you really fully uproot and declutter. So it's almost like decluttering everything within you is what we go through in Sanctuary. So if you're interested in that, I'll link that down below in this video description too. And the other thing with meditation is that the mind loves to be in control. And when we're meditating, we're almost like asking or allowing the mind to step aside, and we're going more into the body with the breath. And if you get into a deep meditation practice, you can be more in a realm of oneness. And so this can be through physics. This is the quantum field where anything is possible and we can create our realities from there. And you can also see it as the abyss, or depending on your spiritual beliefs or understandings, if you follow more physics, you might visualize it a little differently. If you follow spirituality, you might see it differently. But I see it as we're connecting with this unified field where it's like the oneness energy energy, this energy of creation. And that's also what we get into in Sanctuary, is we clear the things from the past and we heal and let go of that stuff. And then we've got this void where we're able to then tune into the heart and tune into our higher self or higher power, whatever we might believe, or just our energy. So if you just believe in science, then you understand through physics that energy cannot be destroyed nor created, only transferred. And we have energy within the body, then that means that energy is infinite. And so it existed before this body, it will exist after this body. And there's this field of energy where there's all possibilities are possible. And so we tune into that in the program Sanctuary too, and we can create our reality from there, from a much more heart-based, heart-centered place. And in my experience, this is something where I've done a lot of Vipassana meditation. And Vipassana is when you sit for 10 days in complete silence and you're doing a meditation practice for these 10 days, 10 hours a day for 10 days. And so they explain it almost as like surgery for the mind with what you're going through in this 10-day process. And when you start the meditation, the first 4 days, you're meditating and you're only focusing on the sensation right here where air enters the nose and exits the nose. And then after those 4 days, the next 6 days, you scan through your entire body and notice the sensations in every part of your body. And you don't crave good sensations or resist bad sensations. You just allow them all to exist. And this is where knowing that pain or emotional traumas and things like that can be stored in the body. It's just tuning into different feelings and then just allowing them to exist. And at the end of these 10 days, well, first, there's a couple different things coming up, is that I've done this 3 different times in my life. And the first time, I remember on the 10th day, I got to a point where I felt like I could feel the atoms in my body. Like I felt like I was no longer a physical body. And when I would scan my body, it was like I could feel like atoms vibrating and feel that I'm not solid the way that we might imagine that we are. And that's something that's so empowering to see, like everything is malleable in this life and everything can be shifted and altered and changed because everything is just vibrating particles. And another time when I was in this, I was living a life where I don't feel like I was really on track with where my higher self or soul wanted to be. And in this 10-day process, I got so much more reconnected with my soul, my heart's desires, what I truly have set out to do in this life, and just coming back to myself and then creating my life from there, from a heart-centered space. And this is what we go through in Sanctuary too, is basically my point. But you don't have to follow the specific things that I do. It's just to say that there are so many different paths. So maybe for you, it's Vipassana meditation. If you're able to take, you need 11 or 12 days to set aside to really go on the journey, because it's 10 full days of the meditation. Then you've got a bit of preparation before, a bit of preparation afterwards. But if that's something that you're not able to do, Sanctuary, my program, is something you could do on your own time. Or you could just join a community. Maybe there's a community center that does weekly meditations or whatever it may be. You can do stuff for free at home on your own too, but it's all just to say that all of these different practices with meditation essentially is to clear out all the gunk that's there, to reconnect with whether you see it as divinity or infinity. That's one of the things in my program. We go through the different chakras, and I call it divinity or infinity when we get to the crown chakra. And this is something that we really tune into with meditation, is this void space of eternal possibilities and creation. And it's just a beautiful process to go through with meditation, to connect to aspects of the self that we may not naturally connect with on a day-to-day basis, especially in this modern Western society. And so to get back to that space where there are a lot of cultures on the planet where meditation is considered something that's normal, that they do multiple times a day. And that's just something beautiful where you can tune in and have whatever practice is best for you. Maybe it's just a gratitude practice where you sit and you just say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for a minute. Or you can just sit in nature and observe nature and take deep inhales and deep exhales. But whatever it may be, I find meditation has been something that has transformed my life for the better. And another reason why we also might avoid it is that the ego, I think I was kind of saying this, is that I started saying this and then I kind of went off a bit. The mind likes to be in control, and the ego I see as kind of being tied with the mind and tied to our current reality and tied to what's familiar, because that is what feels safe to it. So even though it might not be what's best for it or healthy, it's what's familiar, which equals what's safe for it, and the mind being in control. So when we're meditating more, because we're kind of asking the mind to step aside and we're tuning more into the energy, this is something that the mind can resist. And because the mind is often in control subconsciously throughout your whole life, I think there's something like 95% of what we do is based on the subconscious mind, and our thoughts, something like 85% of the thoughts that we have are the same as what we had the previous day and the previous day. So everything is just habitual, subconscious, and we're kind of operating on autopilot with the brain being in control, and we're often unaware of a lot of what's happening. And so when we can take a step back and actually meditate, then it's almost like we're allowing the soul or the spirit or the energy, however you see it, to be a bit more in charge. It's more, I see it also as the heart. Like when we're tuning into the breath, that's the heart chakra. And so we're tuning into the heart and we're allowing the heart to be a bit more in charge than the brain. And scientifically, we've seen that the heart does have a lot more power than the brain. And so it is actually best for us to have our heart be in the driver's seat as opposed to the brain. And meditation is something that can help us with that. But because the mind will resist that, that's one of the reasons we might resist meditation too. So if you can see it as a gift for yourself, tuning into your heart, tuning in with your inner child. So if your inner child didn't have all their emotional needs met, or they didn't have the presence that they needed, then giving them that presence and just sitting with them for a minute a day, if that's what you want to do, or however much time, it doesn't even matter. Even if you just want to take, you can start with just 10 deep breaths every day. So every day you take 10 deep breaths. Maybe that's 30 seconds. I don't know how long it is. It doesn't really matter. It's more so, how can you get started in a way that it feels doable or manageable? And can you get it to a point where maybe it is a little bit longer sometimes? So maybe you've got, when I did the 1 year, I did a minimum of 1 minute a day, but it was often 10 or 20 minutes or even a half hour, sometimes a full hour. And now I'm at a point where I often take conscious breaths all throughout the day. And that's something that I really like doing, is all throughout the day I tune into gratitude, affirmations, taking deep breaths, spending time in nature. So as much as possible, I just incorporate all of these things, but that can be a bit more difficult if we've got a lot of gunk in us that is just clogging us up. And so that's why I'm encouraging either doing the guided meditations or the programs that I mentioned, or just being gentle with yourself and patient with yourself as you're moving through this. Maybe it's also just going to therapy for you and incorporating meditation with your therapy practices or whatever else you might be doing for your well-being. So I hope this video helped you. I'd love to know in the comments if you have any other reasons that you might find that you resist meditating, and maybe we can help each other out in the comments with any suggestions or tips. And if you like this video, then you'll probably like that one, so you can check it out next. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps me out. And subscribe if you haven't already. Click the notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video, and share this video too if you think there's anyone that could benefit from it. And thank you so much for being here. May you be happy, healthy, and free. Bye.